5,000 years ago, before the first stone of the pyramids was ever laid, a city of impossible size dominated the earth. Uruk was surrounded by 9 kilometers of fired mud brick walls, towering over a landscape that had never seen anything like it. Ruling this metropolis was a man who possessed a severe biological advantage. Gilgamesh was 2/3 god. He could outrun horses and effortlessly out-wrestle bulls. He weaponized that physical supremacy against his own citizens. He terrorized the population, forcing the young men of the city into exhausting, lethal labor to build his monuments, and asserting the legal right to take any new bride on her wedding night. Absolute power and divine invulnerability created a monarch completely untethered from the human experience. With no fear of death or consequence, Gilgamesh wasn't a king. He was a force of nature that only the gods could hope to restrain. From the raw clay of the steppe, the gods molded a mirror image of the king. Enkidu was a wild, untamed being, running with gazelles and matching Gilgamesh in raw strength. Enkidu traveled to Uruk, planting himself in a doorway, blocking the king from claiming another bride. These two titans collided, smashing through walls and splintering doorframes in a battle that shook the foundations of the city streets. The brawl ended in a draw. Pinned to the ground, exhausted, Gilgamesh looked at the only creature capable of defeating him, and he felt respect. The king embraced the wild man. Brotherhood did not mellow the king. He immediately proposed an expedition to the forbidden cedar forest to hunt its divine guardian Humbaba. Finding an equal cured Gilgamesh's isolation, but it doubled his arrogance. Having someone who could finally match his strength gave him the complete confidence to declare war on the gods themselves. Humbaba was a nightmare crafted by divine hands, a demon whose breath was fire and whose roar triggered floods. The two warriors marched into his forest, shook the mountains in a massive clash, and Gilgamesh delivered the final blow, while the guardian begged for mercy. Returning flush with victory, Gilgamesh received a marriage proposal from the goddess Ishtar. He flatly refused her, listing off her past lovers and mocking how she had cursed and destroyed every single one of them. Enraged by the insult, Ishtar unleashed the bull of heaven to tear Uruk apart. Gilgamesh and Enkidu stood their ground and slaughtered the divine beast in the dirt. There is a rigid law of balance in this ancient cosmology. You cannot kill a sacred guardian, insult a goddess, and butcher a divine animal without triggering an equal and opposite response from the heavens. The divine council convened and handed down their verdict. Enkidu had to die. The wild man fell ill. For 12 days, Gilgamesh sat by the bed. The king who could out-wrestle bulls realized his unmatched physical power was entirely useless. He could only watch as his equal slowly wasted away. On the 12th day, Enkidu stopped breathing. Gilgamesh refused to leave the corpse. He sat in vigil for a week, clinging to denial, until a single maggot dropped from his brother's nostril. The king's mind shattered. He tore the royal silks off his body, dressed himself in animal skins, and ran weeping into the desolate wilderness. The sight of the maggot stripped away the last of the king's divine confidence. He fled into the wilderness, trading his crown for animal skins, consumed by the realization that if the earth could claim Enkidu, it would eventually claim him too. This cuneiform tablet records Gilgamesh's frantic journey to find Utnapishtim, the sole survivor granted eternal life. Utnapishtim told him immortality was a one-time anomaly. He challenged the king to stay awake for 6 days. The exhausted king immediately fell asleep. Tekilhidi, the immortal, pointed Gilgamesh to a thorny plant at the bottom of the ocean that restored youth. The king tied stones to his feet, dove into the abyss, and plucked it from the seafloor. But while resting on the journey home, a snake slithered out of a pool, swallowed the plant, and slithered away renewed. After crossing the world and defying the gods, Gilgamesh was left with empty hands. Immortality wasn't something to be stolen or earned. It was simply and permanently out of reach. The king walked the final miles back to Uruk. He arrived exhausted, covered in the dust of the steppe, holding absolutely nothing. He stopped at the edge of the city. He looked up at the massive, sun-baked mud brick walls he had forced his people to build. He realized his own flesh would eventually return to the clay, just like Enkidu. But the fired bricks stretching for 9 kilometers would stand for millennia. His name, carved deep into the foundation stones, would outlast his beating heart. He looked at the city that would outlast him, the walls that would carry his name into a future he would never see. The king would return to the dust, but the foundations he built remained.